Le premier intervenant, c'est Vincent Garrigues. On peut l'applaudir. Bonjour Vincent.
Bonjour.
Tu es Tech Lead iOS chez SoundCloud. Alors on est super heureux de t'accueillir. Alors c'est toi qui ouvre le bal cette saison. On voulait une grosse application pour commencer. On s'est dit SoundCloud, on est parfait là-dedans. C'est une super boîte qui est connue dans le monde entier. Et avec toi, on va parler de monétisation, mais aussi de l'histoire de SoundCloud Go. C'est un produit qui a été lancé aux États-Unis en mars 2016, si je ne dis pas de bêtises. Donc tu vas nous dire plein de petites informations. Je ne vais pas trop en dire. On va garder quelques petites surprises. C'est à toi. Et fais-nous partager tout ce que tu sais.
Merci.
Merci à toi.
So, good morning. Today, we're going to talk about SoundCloud Go and the story behind the launch of this key product for SoundCloud. Before I get into the meat of the topic, I have a few words about myself. So, my name is Vincent, and I am the technical lead for the iPhone and iPad applications at SoundCloud. In my time at SoundCloud, which I joined over 4 years ago in 2012, I've contributed to both the iOS and also several of the SoundCloud backend systems. And since over 12 months ago, I've been leading the iOS efforts at SoundCloud. So today, we're going to start by talking a little bit about SoundCloud, the company, and then we'll move on to SoundCloud Go and explain exactly what this product is. And then we'll move on to the actual story of launching it. So when did we actually start working on it, the key milestones that we've achieved, and then the launch day. It's a subscription product, so obviously we're going to talk about working with in-app purchases. And then I have a few funny stories from launch day. So let's start with SoundCloud. SoundCloud is a global company. We have offices in 3 different countries, 4 different offices. The biggest ones are in Berlin, that's our headquarters, followed by New York City, then San Francisco and London. With over 300 employees, around 40% of them are engineers. Teams are also distributed across all of these offices. And some of them that are very relevant for SoundCloud Go, the payments team, the ad products team, they're in New York City. But most of the engineering is actually in Berlin, with the mobile teams, the web teams, and other very key teams for this project. So as you can imagine, communication is critical at SoundCloud. What is SoundCloud Go? In a nutshell, SoundCloud Go is access to over 135 million tracks, offline and ad-free. Offline listening means that you can download playlists, albums, and all your like tracks. With ad-free, nothing stands between your music and you. And with over 135 million tracks, you have access to the world's largest music and audio catalog. It's unparalleled. It's the ultimate music experience. And so what does that actually mean for the application? With offline sync, it's a dramatic change in how the app is supposed to behave. The application has to work offline. And the key thing here is that you can download tracks on the go. And so we have to persist the cache of downloaded tracks across versions. So migrations between one version to the next can have a huge impact. If they fail, it's catastrophic for the app because people will lose all of their offline sync tracks. With over 135 million tracks, there are new challenges that comes with it. Because in SoundCloud, you have a lot of tracks in the free tier, but there are some tracks from major labels and indies that are only accessible for people who purchase the subscription. So we're moving from a model where there was only just one type of track to a different one when tracks can look very different. For instance, maybe this track is not available in your country. Maybe you only have access to a preview of the track, and then you can access the full track. And so these different states, they update based on the user's location, the user's plan, whether they've subscribed or not. And so it's really key for us to make absolutely sure that we're rendering the right tracks to the users. Because if we don't do it, it can have a huge impact to the royalties we pay to the major labels. And so it's a big increase in complexity for the app, and it's also a big increase in complexity for the player, which is like the central part of the SoundCloud application. With over 135 million tracks, it's also a challenge for SoundCloud as a platform. Because we've had to scale the pipeline that moves tracks on the platform to handle millions of tracks coming from the labels. What does that mean? It's a very difficult problem to merge several data sets together, because some of the tracks were already on the platform. So we need to deduplicate the incoming tracks. Because if you have a major artist like Jay-Z, Jay-Z has a track on SoundCloud that has millions of plays. If the same track comes from the label, we don't want to replace the track that was already on the platform and lose all the comments, all the likes, all the reposts. So it's really important to merge these data sets correctly. Similarly, if two tracks belong to an artist, is this artist already on the SoundCloud platform or not? If the artist is, then we need to make absolutely sure that we don't create another profile, and that could confuse users greatly. So merging these duplicates and ingesting millions of tracks in a very short amount of time was a huge technical challenge for us. On top of that, we also have to start reporting and do royalties calculations based on which tracks have been played or not. All right, let's move on to the timeline. So we launched SoundCloud Go in March of this year in the US, but actually, the project started in 2014. And that's quite a long time ago. So a few of us met in an offsite in Berlin in September 2014, and we talked about SoundCloud Go, what it meant to launch an offline subscription product. At that time, we were about to sign a deal with WMG, Warner Music Group. And the thing to know about this is that the deal negotiations, there were always a big unknown in that project. The deals that SoundCloud has signed, they're extremely complex, and there was a lot of uncertainty. It's really hard to sign deals with major labels and keep the heart of SoundCloud true. And so that's why it took so long for us to sign Universal and Sony Music. But in 2014, we were very hopeful. And so after that kickoff meeting, several teams started working on SoundCloud Go. And so very quickly, we've implemented the payments system, the offline sync system, and some very early UI, which led to an alpha version of the application being available in February 2015. And so since February 2015, we've been able to sync tracks offline, play them like engineers on the plane. They were able to listen to whatever they wanted to. But then there was a big gap in 2015 where pretty much nothing related to SoundCloud Go happened. We were working on different features because we didn't have the deals yet. And what happened at the end of 2015, starting Q3, Q4, is that there was a feeling that the deals were picking up. And actually, in December of that year, we signed Universal. And at that time, it was all hands on deck in the company. So we picked up from where we left off in February 2015 and started polishing the product, doing a ton of QA, and just making it ready for launch. We launched end of March, after signing Sony Music only 2 weeks before. And remember when I talked about the challenges of content ingestion? We signed Universal and Sony Music only a couple of months before launching the product. And in that time span, we had to ingest millions of their tracks on the platform to be ready for launch day. After launching in the US, we actually didn't stop there. Very quickly afterwards, there were launches in the UK, Ireland, France in May, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. And we're still ramping up. So I'd like to talk about something really key that enabled us to build offline sync at the beginning of 2015 and just have it still working even though it wasn't launched. And the way we've done this was by using feature flags. And feature flags are an extremely simple concept, but they actually liberate you. Basically, with the feature flag, your feature can be on or off. But the magic is that you can control this remotely. So you can decide to ship a version of your application, and then maybe a couple of weeks later, when the other platforms are ready, you decide to turn the feature on. And so that allows your engineers to work very quickly in short branches and get code very quickly into production, exercise it, and then for product, you decouple releasing the application to the App Store and actually releasing the feature. The picture that you see here, it's a little internal menu that we have so that engineers and product can turn flags on or off. So obviously the users don't see this, but it helps you just develop faster. We use Firebase for remote feature configuration. So that's really key, because when we've built offline sync, it was just turned off, but it was there all along in the application. SoundCloud Go is a subscription product. We have an iOS application, therefore we need to work with in-app purchases. We did not have this problem on web or Android, because there we just had a web-based payment flow. And in-app purchases are really a bit tricky. So this is what the purchase process looks like on mobile. The user is going to see an upgrade button. There are a lot of upgrade points in the application. When the user taps on the button, they're going to be presented with a prompt. In the prompt, we display the price, the key value propositions of SoundCloud Go, and then the user is going to tap upgrade. Something happens with Apple, and then they're going to get welcome to SoundCloud Go. And so next, I'm going to go into detail and explain exactly what happens during that process. So we have 3 different actors here. So there's the application, there's the App Store on the phone, these are the SoundCloud backend systems, and this is also the App Store. And I'll explain why in a minute. So first off, when a user taps on an upgrade button, we have to check with our systems whether this user can upgrade or not. Is the user in the right country? Is the user already subscribed? Maybe the user subscribed on web or on Android. And we also need to know which product to sell to the user. Once we have that information, we actually talk to the App Store to get the price and the currency for that product. Before that point, we cannot display a price to the user because we do not know ourselves what the price is going to be. It is set by the App Store. Once that happens, the user presses purchase, and then it's out of our hands. The App Store handles it. After a while, the App Store is going to tell us whether the purchase is successful or not. If it's successful, we're going to transfer the receipt of that purchase to our servers. And then our servers are going to verify this receipt with Apple. And that's how we protect ourselves against fraud. Because even if someone hacks our application, well, they can't go very far because we verify the receipt independently. And during that time, the application is going to check the verification status with our servers. So we're going to poll, and then at some point, we're going to know whether the purchase was successful or not. So it's a very complex process. There's at least 6 steps. Any one of these steps can fail. And if they fail, what do you do? And especially the purchase process with the App Store, well, maybe the user is going to stay in your application and just use Touch ID to purchase the product. Maybe they're going to get redirected to the App Store app and then come back in. So you really have no control during that time. And so really key thing that we've done was to make this like a key milestone of our project was to make sure that this was extremely well tested, and in particular, automatically, I apologize. And because of this uncertainty, we had a lot of unanswered questions before launch. We did not know exactly how the purchase process with Apple handles. The documentation is not that great. And there's actually very few stories that really explain what happens, because it changes from version to version. And so what we've done is that we monitored very precisely the application behavior in production. And by this, I don't mean analytics at all. I mean technical events that any developer at SoundCloud can start sending so that they can analyze the code that they're pushing to production. And so with this, you can send anything you want, and then you can really track when the app is in production what happens. And so after launching, this gave us a lot of confidence that our purchasing system was actually working. Another thing that we've done was automatically testing end-to-end the purchase process. But as I mentioned, some of this process is out of our control. And so what we've done is that we've replaced the App Store, it's called StoreKit, with a custom implementation. And what happens with this is that when a user presses purchase, instead of calling Apple's StoreKit, we display our own thing, and we can simulate a successful, fraudulent, or cancelled payment. And I'm going to show you what that looks like in video. So this is a recording of an automated end-to-end test, and they run all the time at SoundCloud. So the app is open, the user is going to see here for track. They're going to try to upgrade. This shows up. Tap success. Welcome to SoundCloud Go. And this can be done very early on. You don't need to have the final UI to do this. And you can exercise all of the systems at SoundCloud and make sure that the purchase system works. And once we've had that, we could spend a lot less time QAing the purchase process all the time and instead focus on making the user experience really good. In addition to that, with automated tests, you can test all of the edge cases. So in all of these 6 steps that can fail, you can simulate a failure of any one of them, simulate different kinds of failures, and make sure that they're handled correctly. And this takes a long time to QA manually, but with automated tests, it's extremely simple. Another key thing with in-app purchases, especially when you're handling multiple territories, is that you do not set the price. You choose a tier. For instance, SoundCloud Go is $12.99 in the United States. And in our contracts with the labels, we also wanted to sell SoundCloud Go for £12.99 in the UK. But with £12.99, it's a different tier. And so that's another key thing. It's like never ship your application with a hard-coded in-app purchase product. Because if you do this, and then you decide to launch in a different territory, well, you're going to be blocked. Really, really key. And so that's why if you go on the App Store and you look at the SoundCloud application, you're going to see 4 different in-app purchases. And it's similar to what other big apps are doing. And so that's the key first step, is to serve the right product identifier to your user so that they get the correct price. Now I'm going to tell you a little story about launch day. How did we launch this? So we had a huge script that went from a few days before launch to a few days after launch. Every step had a clear owner assigned. Everybody knew exactly what they needed to do. And so on March 29th, on Tuesday, we all assembled into a room in Berlin and New York, and there was video conferencing between the two, and we just went through the steps. SoundCloud is a big company. There are a lot of systems, a lot of teams. So it was really a choreography of coordinating multiple feature flags that had to be switched in multiple different systems at the right time to deliver all of these great new tracks to the users. Most things went well. Obviously some tests that we wanted to do at the last minute didn't work as expected, but the actual rolling out of SoundCloud Go took around 1 hour. But there was a problem though. This is what happened when everybody tried to upgrade to SoundCloud Go on iOS. And so I can tell you that it is most likely the most stressful moment of my career when I was sitting in a room with everybody. The co-founder and CTO was there, and just like, Vincent, the iOS purchase is not working. So, yeah, and it is the biggest market. Like, everybody purchases on iOS. So, actually, it wasn't my fault. So you know that when you have an in-app purchase, it appears in the App Store, so everybody can see that you're offering an in-app purchase. We had submitted the app a long time ago, and everything was ready for launch, just the flags were turned off. But what we did, like, we didn't want to leak the name of the offering, SoundCloud Go, nor the price. Like, we didn't want the user to see that. And so in the App Store, you can set an in-app purchase as cleared for sale or not. But in the morning at 9 a.m., and we were launching at around 1 p.m., I just clicked on cleared for sale and hope for the best. But actually it took like between 4 and 5 hours for this to actually happen. So like we launched, and then for 20 minutes, very stressful time, but then it just magically worked. So this is like one lesson. It's like you cannot control everything, and especially on iOS with the App Store. So you have to allow and like tell your VPs that there are going to be some leaks, and you just have to accept this. So I'll recap a few of the key takeaways from this project. The first one is to have clear and regular check-ins. So there were a number of stakeholders in the company, and we all met twice a week to discuss the state of the project in our respective areas. And we also had 2 really big meetings in January and February where we went through the entire product and checked the state at which it was in. And what that allowed us to do is to figure out exactly what we can achieve and what we need to drop in order to achieve this goal. And a very painful decision that we had to make was to launch without albums. Because on SoundCloud we have playlists, but we didn't have albums. And it was like actually, it sounds really simple, but it's a very complex problem to solve, to figure out where albums go on the platform, because a compilation is not assigned to a specific artist. So it was really difficult, and we decided to launch without it. And it took us, I think we launched it a month after. I've mentioned them before, feature flags are key. In code, it's as simple as like if else, but it's truly liberating. So I really encourage you to put feature flags in your apps. It helps. The acceptance tests. We spent a lot of time building them, but they're saving us all the time. We have, I think, over 400 of them. So whenever I release the iOS application, I don't do any manual QA at all. I just, if the tests are green, I trust them, and I believe that the app is ready, so I ship it to the App Store. And also, a few weeks before launching, we realized that there was like a big fundamental problem in the application. how we manage data. And we decided to do a big refactoring, very risky, but we had the tests to back us. So we were able to confidently make a really big change in the application and still meet our goals. Measuring the apps. And I think it's not just about measuring, it's mostly about empowering your developers to measure without talking to analysts. Because yes, it's important to measure page views, like your key KPIs, user actions, but it's also very important for your developers to measure the technical things that are happening in the app. Maybe the way the syncing system works, etc., etc. So tools like Fabric are extremely simple to use and to set up, and it gives you a lot of extremely valuable intelligence when building application. The launch test script was great. Everybody knew exactly what they needed to do, what time they needed to do it. And I'll finish by talking about openness. It's a core value of SoundCloud. And so we had several of these really massive spreadsheets that anybody in the company had access to. And in these spreadsheets, we very honestly said the point at which we were in. So it's all green because I took this screenshot at the end of the project, but you can imagine that in January, it was all red. And the really nice thing about this is that not only you know what other teams are doing, but it also helps to build empathy for your own team. And maybe people are going to realize that you're in trouble, and so we can divert resources to help you meet your goals. And with that note, I'm going to thank you for your attention.